Hello, everyone. Very good evening to all of you here. On behalf of Greenworks Trust, I am Krupa Patil, and I welcome you to this session on behalf of the Greenworks Trust team. Friends, we are an organization. We are based in Mumbai, and we do work in the field of nature conservation. And like you all know, that since the lockdown, since about April, we have been doing these online sessions as a part of our nature education and awareness initiative. And I'm very, very happy to share today that this session that we all are attending today is our 50th session of this series. And I'm very, very happy again that this 50th session, like a big number, is happening on World Environment Day. So, friends, welcome to all of you and a very happy World Environment Day. So, this session, as you can see, is called Biodiversity and Us. Okay? The reason behind taking this session is that the theme for this year's World Environment Day is biodiversity. Okay, so this particular session is about understanding biodiversity and us, our connect with them, okay, with the biodiversity. So here we go. What is biodiversity exactly? So we all know that our environment is made up of living and non-living things. Okay? The non-living parts like the air, water, soil, all these things, they are called the abiotic components, which are non-living, the non-living components of the environment. And whereas there are biotic components, which mean living components, they are actually the biodiversity. So bio means life, and diversity is a variety. So this is essentially biodiversity as a word, as a term, means a lot of variety in life forms. Now the life forms may be plants and animals, but it means that there's a lot of variety in the life forms that we have. That is biodiversity. Okay, now where did this all begin? Like we all know, billions of years ago, this whole story and the process of evolution began. Okay, right from tiny microscopic bacteria, then it further developed, and then corals, and here we can see, fish, then birds, mammals, and of course us here, Homo sapiens. So we all, we have come a long, long way since many, many years, and many, many means billions of years. That is how the evolution has happened, and today there is such a lot of biodiversity. Okay? An interesting thing is that this gentleman was Carl Linnaeus. Okay, he was the one who devised the classification system. 250 years back. Okay, 250 years back, this gentleman actually predicted, okay, that there will be 87 lakh species. Okay, the biodiversity, he actually anticipated 87 lakh species was estimated, and he had mentioned that 13 lakhs upper niche plus minus ho sakta hai, but 87 lakhs is what he had estimated 250 years ago. And today we are at 12 lakh species are known to us on land, and to about 2 lakh species in water, marine species. So that is the kind of knowledge that we have now. They are the recorded species. And just imagine that we know 2 lakh species and another 2 lakh in the water. So about 14 lakh species is what we know. And he had estimated there's an estimation of 87 lakh species. So just imagine how much more is undiscovered. Yeah. It's either undiscovered, or also it might be, maybe we don't, there's some have gone extinct without our knowledge. Multiple possibilities they're possible, but just imagine that there's so much unexplored yet. Okay, and that itself makes it so much more fascinating that we the more we know about biodiversity, we realize how much less we know about it. Yeah. So let's get to it. When we all these plants, animals, all the species that comprise biodiversity, they are not just there. Okay, they're not just around us, but they're all around us, and they are constantly interacting with each other. Okay, we are all the entire biodiversity, whether it is plants or it is animal species, they're all interdependent. Okay, we all must have heard of, obviously, about the food chain, right? So quick glance at the food chain, it's one of the most important things or phenomena, the process that is happening around us. Everywhere around us, this keeps happening. So, like, we know that the sun and water, with sun and water, there is the producers, which are of course the green. The plants are there. There are these primary consumers who feed on these plants. Okay. Then there are secondary consumers. Again, so suppose a frog is feeding on this grasshopper and a snake is feeding on a frog. There are higher level raptors who feed on these snakes. And when these animals also die, they get decomposed and they're back. And this whole food chain, okay, this is just one food chain, friends. This is just one representative food chain. Multiple food chains like these are just happening all around us. Okay, they are right there in our environment. Okay, and all these different food chains, small and big, okay, they all form like almost like a network. Okay? It's all like a food. It forms a food web. Okay, so this is all happening around us. Another concept I would touch upon is the food pyramid. Okay, now we just looked at a food chain. Now let's look at a food pyramid. This is how a pyramid looks like. Now again, you might say that it actually has a food chain. So these are plants and then grasshoppers feeding on them, and then snakes feeding on grasshoppers, and again there's a raptor who's feeding on snakes, right? So it's pretty much like a food chain that we saw here. Okay, but what is the difference? This food pyramid also gives us the population and an idea about the population. Okay, now just let's understand this. If you look at the bottom, these are these plants, which are many in number, a lot in number. Compared to that, the ones who feed on these plants become lesser, and then lesser, and then lesser. So if we can see, as we go up the pyramid, okay, as we go up the pyramid, the population of those species becomes lesser and lesser and lesser. Okay, and why is that so? This is a beautiful model, I would say. Okay, because if we understand the pyramid, the base of the pyramid, okay, has to be broad. Only then it will stay. Correct? Only then the pyramid will become stable. Hence, we can see all these. There should be lots and lots and lots of plants. That is forming the base of the pyramid. That is making this entire food chain, okay, stable. That is what will give stability. And then as we go up, like we see, we get lesser and lesser. So this pyramid also, it is also like a food chain, but a food chain with also a population dynamic to it. Okay, so we looked at the food chain, we've looked at the food pyramid. Now we go ahead. What is the importance of biodiversity? Right, like we saw that the food pyramid is there and how the food pyramid is stable because the way it is. Okay, we can also see here one of the biggest things, the biggest importance of biodiversity is maintaining the ecological balance. You can see here what kind of a circus this is, but yes, all these animals and plants put together and their interdependence on each other is maintaining the ecological balance for us, right? Of course, we look at this photo and we know that there is a lot of medicinal value that comes from biodiversity. So a lot of medicines are extracted from plants, and therefore forests, they have for medicinal value. Let's look at this picture here. This is a picture of a lichen. Okay, now lichens, they are called bioindicators, biological indicators. Now what does that mean? Is that they are the ones who give us small signals, okay, whether things are going right or wrong. For example, these lichens are an indication of a very rich forest, a healthy forest, which is pollution free. Okay, lichens only grow in places where there is no pollution or there's very little pollution. Okay, so if we are seeing lichens, then we are sure to know that there is very little pollution. And on the other hand, if suppose we are seeing lichens, and a few years later the lichens start vanishing, that can be an indicator that yes, pollution in that area is increasing. So they are clear-cut indicators. They are biological indicators of pollution in this case, right? So that is again a very important aspect that the biodiversity offers us. It is giving us signals of the things, the changing things that are happening around us. Let's come to this picture. This picture, as you can see, there's a tiger, and you can see the jeeps, the safari jeeps at the back. And yes, it talks about wildlife tourism, right? So wildlife tourism is again a very big, an important aspect, because it, in terms of revenue generation also, and in terms of providing employment also, right? So we all must have gone to visited the sanctuaries and national parks, and you've seen that there is such a big network who's dependent on that park, on the biodiversity of the park. Okay, whether it is the jeep drivers here, there might be hotels associated with the, who are there in the periphery of the park. All these, the place where the park is located, a lot of employment and livelihood is dependent on the healthy biodiversity of the park. If the park and the forest is not there, if the biodiversity, the animals are not there, then that is a big problem, right? So that is the importance of biodiversity. Now let's look at the threats. Okay, we all know that certainly biodiversity is so important. सुना है, कहा है, पता है कि biodiversity बहुत important है. But unfortunately, still today, the biodiversity is facing a lot of problems, is under pressure. And just let us look at the threats here. On the right, we can see these are the natural threats that are there. So whether it is forest fires, soil erosion here, so different factors which are natural factors that affect biodiversity. And these trends are, unfortunately, these are human created problems for the biodiversity. Okay? And we can look here, hunting, poaching, though there's a Wildlife Protection Act, all the law is in place, but still, unfortunately, poaching still happens in our country, and that is a major threat to biodiversity. Another picture here, we can see how the deforestation is happening. That is also deforestation is rampantly happening, which is a big threat to biodiversity. And pollution. Of course, pollution is created the way, this is all the ways that we have created, we as humans have created, which is causing a threat, a big threat to biodiversity. Yeah. Now you must be wondering, okay, so what? Itna threat hai biodiversity. Okay, there is a lot of threat, biodiversity in pressure, but what will happen? If a certain species, if one, there are so many species that we saw, 12 lakh species here. Now, out of which one or two species or a few species, 100 species, if they are threatened, what's the big deal? Okay, what is going to go wrong? Right? Isn't that it's quite a logical question कि एक हाथ species से क्या फर्क पड़ने वाला है? I'll tell you about it. Okay, let's look at this picture. This is a picture of a cheetah. Okay, nowadays we only see cheetahs in these films. Okay, which are Africa and Kenya and वहाँ का सब films होते हैं. But let me tell you, cheetah was there in India. We had cheetahs, but they went extinct in 1952. Okay, cheetahs were very much there in India. Similarly, tiger. Tiger, imagine friends, was there in Mumbai. Today, Mumbai does not have a tiger. Okay, it was the last tiger from Mumbai was lost in 1930s, right? And we've been living after that, correct? Yeah. After Mumbai losing a tiger, is there a direct impact on me or you, us? Not really. Have we faced a direct impact? Has our life changed just because one tiger has, vanished from Mumbai, or just because a cheetah has gone extinct from India? Not really. Okay. Let us look at one more example here. The pink-headed duck. Okay, this bird was last seen in 1949. Ever since 1949, it has not been sighted again. So it is probably believed to be, maybe it has gone extinct. That is the kind of possibility that people are talking about, because it has not been seen, absolutely not been seen after 1949. Okay, but again, because there is no pink-headed duck, has our life changed right now? Not really. Let us look at a very recent example of the great Indian bustard. This handsome-looking bird, okay, was there in Maharashtra. In fact, we have a sanctuary that is named by this bird. It is in Nanas, okay, in Maharashtra, and it's called the Great Indian Bustard Bird Sanctuary. Now, this sanctuary had Great Indian bustards, and slowly, because of a lot of threats to them, today there is no bustards in Maharashtra. Okay, that is quite a sad thing. But the fact is that there are no bustards in Maharashtra. Few of them just are still there in northwestern parts of India, Rajasthan and all that. And in entire world, the Great Indian Bustard is now only restricted to the northwest of India, because even Maharashtra has lost Great Indian Bustards. Right? So now, what is actually going wrong? Tell me. All these examples that I gave you, is it directly, affecting me? Has it affected us? Like one bustard not being there or one tiger not being there, has it really affected us or our day-to-day life? But have you ever thought, okay, let's pause for a little while and look at other things that are happening currently around us. Okay, here. Needless to say, what we all know what Cyclone Amphan and Cyclone Nisarga has done. Okay, these are very, very recent examples. Cyclone Amphan that came to Odisha and West Bengal, and Cyclone Nisarga on the western, the Konkan side of the western coast of India. And we have just seen every day what kind of damage it has done, what kind of destruction it has done to us. Yesterday, कल की न्यूज में था that 5,000 crores is the estimated damage by cyclone Nisarga. Just imagine how big that damage is. Okay. Another example: increase in disease outbreaks. Okay, we are today right in the middle of a pandemic, and we are seeing what kind of what are we going through because of this pandemic. Okay. Again, we should take a minute and just look at all these researches and studies. Okay, researchers are actually studying this topic, and they are coming to this conclusion that there's a connection between biodiversity loss and the increase in disease spread or epidemics and pandemics. Okay, researchers are working on this, and we can see all these reports what they say. So here, what is actually happening? Then we are unable to assess the loss, assess the biodiversity loss. Why? Sometimes the effect of the loss is not immediate. Like we saw that one tiger is not there, so immediately it's not affecting me. Okay, so sometimes the effect is not very immediate, and sometimes it takes time for us to realize that the problem we are actually facing is due to biodiversity loss. Okay, this realization comes to us much later, is probably because there is this to confirm something like this takes a lot of study, and the study is what we are lacking in. There's not enough study that is happening on this front, and hence it takes a long while for us to even realize that, oh no, this problem is actually due to biodiversity loss. Let us look at this example here. There's lots of indicator species, like I mentioned earlier, biological indicators. This is a tiny insect. It's called Trichoptera caddisfly. Okay? This is an indication of good quality of water. Now imagine the presence of this insect, how much it can tell us. But we are losing indicator species. That is, and we are just rapidly losing our biodiversity. Various forms and various species in biodiversity are rapidly going. We are losing them, and it is happening right under our noses, and we are still so unaware about it. Very unfortunate, but we are so unaware about this loss and the kind of impact that this loss can have. One of the reasons, friends, what happens is when this kind of loss happens, okay, a certain species is affected, nature has its own way of accommodating for it, or making small adjustments for it. Like in this case, we all know that vultures are scavengers. They are excellent in terms of keeping the environment clean, because they clear carcasses. Okay, now vultures population is going down, that also we know. But what happens is, in this case, as you can see, crows have taken over. Crows are sharing a certain part of scavenging, and hence the impact, suppose a vulture population will down, that impact will not immediately be visible. Suddenly we are not going to see carcasses lying around us, because other species like crows are taking over and doing their little bit of their duty, contributing to the vulture's job. Okay, so the impact is not immediate. But can crows completely replace the job of vultures? Certainly not. Let's look at this picture here. This is the vultures are huge. They're big in size. Okay, and here we can see that the vulture is gulping down an entire leg. Okay, so now they can actually gulp down entire bones and legs, and clear up carcasses because they have nature has given them that power. They have high amounts of acids in them, okay, which help them to digest all this. Also, they feed on dead carcasses. Okay, so the carcasses, those dead bodies will have some kind of infection, bacteria. How come they don't get affected themselves even after consuming that dead carcass? It is because of these acids. Okay, and this is a special thing, special adaptation that they have from nature. So they are meant for this, whereas crows are not. So crows cannot ever completely replace vultures. Okay, so this kind of nature adapt, making arrangements or making accommodations might happen, but that is only for a small part. It cannot completely replace an importance of a species or the work that a particular species does, right? So what? फिर भी हमारे मन में क्वेश्चन आता है सो व्हाट इतना क्या फर्क पड़ेगा दैट if certain species is lost or one food chain is broken probably what difference will it make to me, okay, but now I'm going to give you examples of some species that yes they directly impact you can see and we can realize how important biodiversity is to us. The first example comes here, bees, known to us. Okay, we can see how bees go flower to flower and they help in pollination. Right? Bees are excellent pollinators. Let's look here. It is estimated that one third of our food, okay, is pollination dependent. So whatever food, whatever diet we have, one third of it is pollination dependent, right? And let's look here that pollination, bees actually pollinate 70 types of crops that we eat. Isn't that a big number? So if there's a decline in the bee species or the bee population, what will it do? It will not have pollination and it will directly impact on our diet, our food, and there will be food scarcity. It will lead to food scarcity, which yes, that isn't that a direct impact on us? Right, because 70 types of crops, imagine that bees pollinate for us. So that is a direct impact. Let's look at one more. Okay, birds. Birds play an important role in seed dispersal. The birds who are frugivorous or they feed on fruits. Okay, because see, pollination to ho gaya. After pollination, fruit is formed, but the fruit seeds have to be dispersed. Only then new trees are going to grow. Correct? So who does this job of seed dispersal? Is the birds who feed on fruits. Right? So birds have a major role in forest regeneration because they do seed dispersal. Another kind of birds, which are insectivorous birds, what do? Of course, they take a lot of insects who might be pests for our crops. Okay, and therefore they directly, again here there's a direct impact. Okay, on our crops, there's a direct impact because of the pests. Okay, and that will lead to food scarcity for us. So that is this bird is called Indian trouser. Okay, and we can see that it's consuming one insect. This is a locust. Recently, friends, we have also seen the locust attack that happened. Okay, it was in news, and we have seen how what big damage it has done to us. Okay, so we know that pests can really devastate our crop and our yield, right? So that is again a direct impact to us humans. Similarly, another great pest controller is bats. Okay, the bats that fly around, we can see in Sham ko hum log, if we just stand in our windows for some time, we are sure to see those small bats flying around. Now they also are excellent consumers of insects. Okay, they also consume mosquitoes, and let me tell you just one quick statistics about them that one single bat, okay, is capable of eating 600 insects in one night. Now imagine that is quite a big help that they do because mosquitoes here, so we all know that mosquitoes, what kind of diseases mosquitoes can spread, including malaria. This is again direct impact that it is controlling these pests and also controlling the amount of diseases that can come to us, right? One tiny, these two tiny creatures, बहुत छोटे हैं, but बोलते हैं ना कि साइज में छोटे हैं, but काम बहुत बड़ा करते हैं, right? So these are ants and earthworms. Now we'll see why are they so important. So now let me tell you, these ants, we all know that they dig into the soil and okay, they actually upturn the soil while going digging deep. Okay, and now here's the statistics again. Look at the figures, just they're so amazing that ants can actually take 34 tons. Okay, they can upturn 34 tons of soil per hectare per year. Okay, that's quite a lot of amount of soil that they can upturn, these tiny creatures, but 34 tons they can upturn, and this upturning and churning of soil actually helps maintaining the health of the soil. Okay, so maintaining the quality of the soil, this is very, very important. Similarly, earthworms, we can see earthworms have the potential and they do 10 to 500 tons of soil upturn per hectare per year. There's another very interesting thing that earthworms do, okay, other than, of course, the soil upturn, is that when earthworms dig down, okay, they make very tiny passages through the soil. Okay, tiny, tiny burrows are made within the soil. And again, here they make 220 openings in the soil per square meter. Okay, now why are these openings so important? You might say that tiny earthworms, they make some tiny burrows and these 220 openings. Why are they so important? Okay, but yes, they are important to us because these openings allow water seepage. So that it is rainwater, जो बाहर का पानी है, that it allows to seep into the soil effortlessly. And what is again, उसका benefit क्या है? That we all know that under the soil there's something called groundwater. Okay, there is a water storage. The water storage is done under the ground. Okay, and this water storage, where this water comes from? It comes from the seepage, right? So let's say whatever rainfall comes from top, that has to seep down. It has to go down in the soil and go back to the soil. Okay, and then the water table can be maintained. So these earthworms, the tiny 220 openings per square meter that they do, that allows some seepage of rainwater. We all know that we all might be seeing in cities and buildings around our houses. Everywhere they are tiled these days. Every tiling is done, and there are mosaic tiles and cementing is done. Or timber लगा रहता है. Everybody wants a clean parking area, so the soil is cemented. An open area is cemented for good parking lots or good areas around the buildings. What that does is it just blocks any of the rainwater to go down back to the soil. And that is why we are losing our water table. The water table is getting affected because of that. Okay, the water that falls from top, the rainwater that just goes down in the drain, and it's absolutely, it's a waste, it's a sheer waste of a natural resource when it goes down the drain. Whereas it should actually seep into the ground and go to the water table. That is called water table recharging. That recharging of water table is very important. Otherwise, we are going to soon, we are already facing rather water scarcity. In many parts, we might have seen that borewells are dug, and borewells में कितना भी dig करो, बहुत deep जाके भी आजकल पानी नहीं आता है. Many building societies have dig borewells and they realize that there's borewell में पानी ही नहीं आ रहा है. That is because there is no water table left under you. And so now we know that to our daily needs, water is one of our daily needs. And again, a direct impact, friends. One tiny earthworm making this, giving us such a big impact that is useful to us. Okay, we move on to the next one. Tinier than them. Okay, we just spoke about ants and earthworms. Now I'm going microscopic to the microscopic level. Let's talk about some bacteria. What do these bacteria do? Okay, the root system. Okay, there are roots under the ground or in the soil. These bacteria are there around these roots. Okay, and what do they do? These bacteria actually make a lot of nutrients available to plants. Now, the plants need nutrients like nitrogen, potassium, some phosphates. They are all very essential for the plant growth. Okay, which is not very easy for the plant to absorb. But these bacteria make it easy for the plants to absorb because of their presence around the roots. So that is that one big thing that the bacteria do. Very interesting thing that all these bacteria, they form like like a shield around the roots. And there are some kinds of bacteria which are harmful for the plant. Now those bacteria are actually kept away. These good bacteria that are there around the roots, they actually form a natural shield for the harmful bacteria, and they don't allow them to attack the crops. So both ways, double fold benefit. These very tiny microscopic bacteria give us. Fungus, another very good example. Like we all know, again, these roots, we know there's a root system, okay? But in the soil, there are very tiny, really very tiny spaces that are in between the soil particles, okay? Till where these roots won't even reach. Okay, the roots only reach till here, but there are still some spaces in the soil that are unreachable for the roots. And that is where there are water and there are minerals. In those tiny spaces, there are still minerals. Okay, now the fungus, they are again very tiny, who are present in those really tiny places, and they make the water and minerals available to these roots. Okay, to a place where the roots cannot reach themselves, the fungus, they make it available to the plant, and therefore they grow. So again, it's a direct impact. We get benefited by it. Now let us look at marine water. An interesting thing to tell you is that marine, we all know that forests, we get oxygen from trees and we get oxygen from forests, so they are all important. But let me tell you here that marine water is extremely important in terms of giving oxygen. Okay, 70% of the oxygen that is there in the atmosphere comes from the oceans, right? They come from the oceans. So we can say that look here, all the air that we breathe, okay, it's as good as saying like 70% agar hai, so 10 breaths out of 7 breaths out of 10 that we take, they actually come from the ocean. So 7 times we breathe out of 10, we have to say thank you to the ocean, because 70% oxygen is coming from there. And how does that come? Here, it comes from these really tiny, they're called phytoplanktons. Okay, these are very tiny plants that are there in marine water, and they again, like any other plant, they have a CO2 intake, they take in carbon dioxide, and they release oxygen, and they release oxygen in huge amounts, which is 70% of the oxygen that is available in the atmosphere. Okay, so that is what the phytoplanktons do. Now let's look at this. I'm going to talk about whales. Okay, and how are they directly connected to us? Now we might say, think, I'm sitting at home and one whale is far away in the ocean somewhere. How is the whale directly impacting me? Right? So here is the story now. The whale, it feeds on krills. Okay, they feed on krills, and when the whale has to poop, of course, when there's an intake, there has to be a downloading system also, like all of us. So whales also need to poop, but the fun thing is that they cannot poop under pressure. So they really cannot, actually poop here. They have to come up near the water surface to actually poop. Okay, and this poop that they give out, okay, their excreta, that is an excellent fertilizer. It acts as a fertilizer for the phytoplankton. Right? Now there is a connect that yes, the whale is giving us the food that is excellent fertilizer to the phytoplankton, which are giving us 70% oxygen to breathe. Right? Another thing I would like to tell you, friends, it is immaterial of where we stay. Okay, it is not such that only if we are staying near the coast and near the sea, only then the air that we breathe is coming from the ocean. No, the oceans give out 70% oxygen that is there in the atmosphere overall, everywhere. So wherever we are, whether or not we are close to the sea, is immaterial, does not matter. We are still breathing 70% oxygen that is given by oceans, right? And hence, phytoplanktons are important, and hence whales are important. Let us look at another thing from under the waters, coral reefs. Okay, coral reefs are, they support a lot of fish species which we depend on for diet. We all know that a large part of our community many people depend. Fish is an important part of their diet, regular diet, and these fish they depend on coral reefs. So if coral reefs are not there, like we are seeing here, there are nets and they're getting polluted and they're getting they're under threat. If coral reefs go, the fish species won't survive, which we actually have. They are a part of our diet. So it is again a direct impact on our day-to-day diet. Right. Next one, very very important part of the biodiversity, mangroves. Now, what are mangroves? These are special types of trees which grow on the coasts. Okay, and India, if we look at India, a large part of the peninsular India is all surrounded by oceans and seas. So we have a quite a handsome coastline, and therefore these plants become very very important to us. Now, what do they do? Why are they so important? Is because we can look here. They have a very peculiar kind of a root system. Okay, and there are many roots which have inter root spaces, I can say. They leave a lot of gaps, so there's a big network that they form of mesh, or a network of roots is formed. Now what do they do is they actually have the power, because of these inter spaces, they have the power to reduce the impact of the waves that come. Okay, they reduce the impact of the tide, reduce the impact of tsunamis for that matter. Okay, a normal wave, normal tide, they can reduce the impact up to 66%, whereas tsunami impact can be controlled by 30%. Okay, that is the power of them. And let's take a video. Take a look at a video. Okay, this video is it's actually a tabletop experiment that was done to demonstrate the importance of mangroves. So let's take a look at that. Okay, this is a tabletop model, and here we can see that there are waves generated, artificially generated waves. Then there are these trees in the middle, and we can see here that there is again water. This water is continuing. There is land here. I'm going to show you the video again. Let's take a look at it and understand. So there are waves generated artificially from here, and we can see how they go. And as they go ahead inside the trees, the impact is reduced. And when we come to the other end of the tank, there is the water is still, and there is no impact of those waves here. And this is exactly what mangroves do for us. Okay, I hope the video was very was clear and understood.
Yes, it was.
So that is what mangroves do for us. Okay, because on the coastline, there are constant waves that are coming in. There's tide that is coming in, and every time a wave comes in, what happens is it takes away some soil. So there's some amount of soil erosion that happens, and when the tide comes in, it again gets sediment from the sea to back to the land. Okay, now in case of mangroves, this is what they do. They avoid soil erosion. Okay, from good soil going into the sea, and any soil coming back to the when the tide comes back, that sediment that is controlled by these mangroves. Whereas if mangroves are not there, wherever there are human-made structures or man-made structures, the same impact that the mangroves create is not happening. So it is actually damaging the soil quality at our coastline. Okay, and of course we just saw the impact of waves and tsunamis, how it can actually control that. Let's take a look at this picture. This picture is of a local. We all use local trains are supposed to be the lifeline of Mumbai. Okay, and let's take an example of Mumbai. If we travel by local trains, many areas like Mahim, Bolo, Bandra, all these areas, Kharghar on the other side, Mumbra, Diva, all those areas. When we travel by a local train, we can see these kind of trees around the tracks. Okay, we all might have seen, whoever travels by local trains regularly, we might have seen these kind of trees around them. They are the mangroves. Okay, and they are the ones who are actually taking care, and they are arresting the effect of these waves. Imagine ये पूरा patch अगर चला गया, if we lose all this, what will happen? it will imagine the kind of soil erosion and the land takeaway that happens. Okay, and it will directly impact this. The tracks will can get washed off. And imagine cities like Mumbai, cities that are on the coast, who are directly in contact on the shore, on the coastline. They can have a huge impact if mangroves are not going to be there. Okay?
Ma'am,
So these examples are enough. I've told you many examples of how different species in biodiversity, whether they are plants or whether they're animals, how big or small. We have seen right from microorganisms to the largest whale, how all of them in small different ways they have an direct impact on us. Okay, we are directly getting impacted because if any threat happens to them, we are at stake actually. Okay, so it is really the time to wake up, okay, to this fact and take a serious thought at it. Why? Because let's take a look here. Whales are dying. This I'm just going to show you a lot of a lot of news articles, okay, by which we can get an idea of what is happening actually around us. Okay, whales are dying, and we have just seen how important whales are to us, right? Planktons are dying. Just take a look at this everywhere. This is happening. There's a huge threat to planktons, and if the planktons are dying, obviously there's a threat to us. Birds are dying. We are seeing a sharp decline in the bird population. In different bird species are getting threatened. Birds, even bats, for that matter. We recently saw, during the pandemic, we saw how misunderstanding about bats had happened. It came up, and that bats can probably spread corona, and that is why a lot of bats got killed in the process. And it's very unfortunate that bats were actually so important, such important pest controllers in our environment for us. They actually got killed in the process because of sheer negligence of knowledge and sheer lack of awareness. Okay, so this is happening right around us. Let's look at this case study. Okay, a very interesting case study is about sparrows. They are very commonly seen bird for us, but this is a case study of China which I want to share with you. Here on this in this poster, we can see that there's a rodent, there's a rat, sparrow, housefly, and a mosquito. Okay, this was when China's population started growing. Because of the increasing population, they were thinking of how to how to still maintain the food supply and stability of food, and food scarcity nahi hona chahiye. Okay, it was one of the worries, and also that the population was growing, so they wanted adequate food grains. Now sparrows were the ones who were eating food grains, is what they realized. Rats, sparrows, they all were a threat, okay, to the growing population, and therefore a proper permission was given, and these four species were declared as pests, and a proper permission was given to kill them. Okay, to the extent that sparrows got killed. People actually killed sparrows to the limit that sparrows absolutely vanished from that area. Okay, what happened after that is what is a real lesson teacher. Okay, what happened after that is there was an insect attack. Okay, there were pests for crops. Okay, and there was insect attack, and a huge amount of damage was done then. And that is when it was understood and that realization came that, oh no, sparrows who were also eating insects were very important. For they could have been the natural pest controllers, the impact would have been less, and it is important to have sparrows back. And to the extent that they actually reintroduced sparrows uh, uh, in China, and so but it was only after an unfortunate event that happened. Okay, that they actually came up with the reintroduction of sparrows. So that is the kind of damage, immediate impact it can show. We recently saw the Tordhad that happened. Okay, the swarms, clouds of locusts that were flying around, and how they came and how they just came and they came and they conquered and devastated everything, right? A big damage was done. A large amount of destruction happened, crops destruction happened on their way, and certainly imagine that if we had enough natural pest controls, probably this damage could have been lesser. Okay, could have been arrested. Yeah, coral reefs are dying. We saw that whales are dying and birds are dying, bats are dying, coral reefs are dying. We also saw how coral reefs are important to us, but unfortunately they are also dying because of, again, a lot of waste that is created by humans, by us. Mangroves are dying. Very, very unfortunate. Very unfortunate for a country like India who has a big coastline, and for a country like us to be losing mangroves. It is it's very important that it's high time that we realize the importance of mangroves and protect them. But here are the news articles that we are seeing right in front of us, and they all say that all mangroves are under high pressure and under high threat, and mangroves are also dying. So friends, I'm going to read out this thing to you. Still can't connect the dots between climate change, erratic cyclones, these floods happening in one part of the world, droughts, bushfires happening in the other part of the world, and a collapse in the order of life. Just spend a minute to understand this statement, friends. In fact, today I got a WhatsApp message. Okay, it was actually funnily written WhatsApp. It was a forward that I got, and it said that हम लोगों ने हमें हमने cyclones देखे, हमने cloud bursts देखे, हम लोगों ने floods देखे हैं, हम लोगों ने pandemic भी देख लिया, अब सिर्फ डायनासोर देखना बाकी है क्या? Okay, that was the message. So while it was a very funny and a whatever forward, it set me thinking, and it is really a matter of concern. We all must be thinking and giving it a serious thought that all these things that are happening around us, friends, can we now connect the dots? That all these things that are happening, these cyclones, the pandemic that we are right in the middle of and battling it out, all these things are somewhere connected to the loss in biodiversity, to the fact that biodiversity is not respected and taken care of well. Why is that? There's a lot of ego. Man, obviously, we probably started thinking that he's on the top. We saw that pyramid, okay? At the top of the pyramid, the apex predator, the one at the top of the pyramid is the one who's controlling the whole pyramid. So, is that's a possibility that man thinks that he is on the top, or and can control everything, whereas what we realize, what we have just seen, is that we are an equal part of the biodiversity. It's not just an interaction between them. We are equally a part of the interaction, and we will get impacted if they get impacted. So the thought of being eco, okay, is very important. We have to leave our ego and go to the eco thought, okay, and understand that biodiversity and us, and that is precisely why the title of this presentation or this session was biodiversity and us. That it is high time that we understand that we are an equal, part of as all of them. We are same as all of them. We are not anybody, superior to them. We are a part of them, and we must stay like a very, like a good part uh, and a part of the entire biodiversity, because we are directly connected. Look at this image. What does this tell us? That our consequences, whatever we are doing today, is having a direct impact. And we don't realize this, that we are, by doing damage to someone else, we don't realize that we are also actually going to fall. If this person, with all our actions, have a consequence which is back on us. So all the damage, all the threat that we are doing to biodiversity today is not only destroying the biodiversity, and it is not them and us again, because it is going to impact us. We are going to get impacted if biodiversity is impacted, right? So it is high time that we understand this. Okay, so friends, thank you. On this World Environment Day, let us, again, realize the importance of biodiversity, realize the importance that we are equally a part of the biodiversity, and how dependent we are on each other. Okay, so On this note, I end this session. Once again, I wish you a very, very happy World Environment Day. Thank you very much. Friends, if you have any questions, we can look at that. And again, I would like to, tell you the fact that today I'm very happy to share that, this session on the World Environment Day and about biodiversity as a theme. This is our 50th session that we are doing in this series. And from the entire team of Greenworks Trust, who has been organizing these online sessions for you consistently, almost one session every day. So from the entire team, I would like to thank you all for being there, supporting us in this initiative, being there for all these sessions, attending them, and actively participating in our sessions. So thank you very, very much. Thanks a lot.